You're watching N.I.C.E Behind the Scenes, a space for conversation about community, collaboration, and the future of journalism. What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in again to N.I.C.E Behind the Scenes. I'm Christopher Flood, the drummer Norris, WHYY's managing editor for community and engagement. With me, of course, as always, is Eric Marsh, community outreach organizer, and our special guests, Steve and Carolyn Filmore, publishers of the Northwest local newspaper. What's up, everybody?
Hey.
I'm looking forward to this conversation. You guys have actually been, you guys are among the newer members to N.I.C.E, but I feel like you guys are setting a standard along with people like P.O.C. and the ways that you guys are thinking about collaboration and content integration with our partners is really inspirational. So, and that's something that I want to get to, but I want to get the elephant out of the room first. I've been reading journalism publications, attending journalism conference, and hearing on and on for years about why publishing print content is dead, right? But yet in 2021, you guys are steadily putting out a paper and you're passionate about it. And I really just want to know why. What keeps you going? And how are you defying all of the critics and the pundits in the journalism industry?
Well, it's something we've seen that has an effect with people either older and younger as well. I mean, in fact, the newspaper for younger folks is sort of like it's unusual for them, so they're drawn to it. And the older folks like something where they're going to be able to hold on to a paper, think about it. You can put the newspaper down, go do something, come back, pick it up again. Another point that Carolyn makes that's very resonant with me is that she talks about the algorithms on social media and how it's so easy to get into a bubble, and you can, whatever you read, you get more of what you read. I mean, everyone knows this. But with our newspaper, we curate it, I guess is the best word for it. And so if you're reading through a newspaper, we've heard this from people on more than one occasion where they've said, I didn't expect to read that after seeing this story. I didn't expect to see this story next to this story. So there's something about the actual placement, the analog nature of a newspaper that helps.
It's analog. And I read something somewhere. I think it actually was a Roger Ebert review. But there's different ways the brain processes, right? You can do digital, hits your brain a different way than analog does. Analog is its own thing. And in fact, when you look at there's these beta waves that you see when people are dreaming and stuff, and they get triggered, a certain type of wave that gets triggered when you're looking at digital is more like a hypnosis, whereas the brain gets triggered when it's analog, like in a movie situation or something like that, more in a fantasy way, like when people's brains trigger when they're dreaming kind of thing. So I always have held on to this little nugget and been like, there's something about analog, and just knowing that there's a need for it. I won't go so far as saying that we're, thriving necessarily, we figured it out or anything like that, but we're trying, right? And I think if print can still be something more than what you can get online, and we're experimenting with giving artists the ability to put their picture in it and using a picture to inspire content. So if someone gets to looking at it, maybe they'll be like, there's no way to see that the way it is in digital. You have to look at it in print because it's like a poster. So starting to add more things like that, and maybe that can have a life of its own. Maybe that's why print needs to stay. But I know print needs to stay. We both know print needs to stay. We just don't know quite how. And I think that the way in might be melding, giving neighbors a platform that we just amplify them on. And we have a team of designers and writers, and you give us what you've got, and we'll figure out how to push that content out and amplify that voice and get that out there. So that's kind of where we are right now, seeing ourselves as more of a platform that's just trying to figure out how to use the print to really attract eyeballs.
The question that I had, even before you figure out how to remain solvent, was the history. What made you even get into printing a newspaper?
Right.
Where did you start?
Right. Well, I'm going to take this real fast because I think I got down to a system now. We have to get this question all the time. So we started as a history blog, right? So we're trying to write history about a neighborhood and find out about this house that we're following because we want to know all about it. And the frustrating thing that I personally kept running into, because I was doing a lot of the research for us, is that there's only it's like 2 sources in Northwest Philly at the turn of the century who are putting out anything that's worthwhile, like a conversational source. Like you can find scholarly stuff, obviously people are publishing, but as far as like the neighborhood stories, there's like, what do they call it? The Standard was, we got the Standard, and there's another one. There's just these the same voice. Hagner was one who did a book. So as I was researching, I kept getting angry that there wasn't more to pull from, that I kept hearing the same stories. And it was like, after I researched Hagner and some of these names, I'm like, well, these guys were super privileged dudes that were just like, they had the time and the effort to put their content out there. So like, what about the other guys? And as we were researching this house, we ran into privy diggers, people that literally go down where they identify where the outhouse was. They go down and they find like all kinds of things, medicine bottles and piggy banks,
dueling pistols,
all kinds of stuff. You'd fall down in the toilet when people were out there. So then he said to us, which is so great because he was like so passionate. He would make lists, and you can even follow him online. It's fascinating what he finds. And he was like, this to him, it's the trash of the generation, and there's so much in there. What were they taking? And opium bottles and this. And you learn so much when you know about the average person. What was their day like? So I'm kind of obsessed with that,
history
right?
of little people, basically.
And then it just was a jump to like, wait a minute, I'm here. Like, maybe I should be writing shit down so that people can find this later, because I'm not going to meetings and people are saying one thing, and then the community council goes and puts something else out that sounds like more what half the people said. They have their own little agenda. So I'm like, aha. So if I just supplement that, then we're both out there. So it became just sort of a trying to go into meetings, learning history, and trying to make that relevant to now became, we saw the need, right? And then East Falls' little paper closed. We started up. They didn't love us. So we started looking for other people who might, and Germantown had a huge need, and we're just scratching the surface here. But just from that, it's been really, really, really satisfying.
And what was the year that it was founded?
Oh, our paper started in 2014.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the challenge of starting up a print product, and not just the financial challenges, but the challenge of getting buy-in, right, from advertisers or people who may think that you have to convince print is actually still valuable?
Well, it's actually, you'll see it when people actually see their name on a newspaper. It's really funny that it has an effect. When you can actually show somebody, here is you, here's an article about you in the newspaper, or here's an ad for your business. They keep that. It triggers in some way that's not the way you get on a digital device. And it's hard to explain why. I don't have an explanation as to why, but there's something, it's interesting when they have it in their hands. There's an actual reaction.
Do you think that it has something to do with the permanency of that print, right? It's very different when we're walking around with digital content that we can just turn on and off on a daily basis. We're constantly with it on our hip. But something in print, it gives this sense that, it could be somebody's insulation inside their wall in 100 years.
Exactly.
Right? We see that all the time.
And actually we've seen with, I think, P.O.C, she actually was one of her partners actually hung up we had done one of their illustrations, and she actually put it up on the wall and almost framed it, I think. So there's something about it that when people, and because it is unusual at this point now, smartphones are the common denominator for everybody. But newspapers are, they're an outlier. They're not the usual thing you see on a daily basis.
Even the marketing nowadays, they're telling people that now if you give someone something in the mail, they're actually reading junk mail these days. Because people are like, ooh, I don't do it, but they say that some people are appreciating. So junk mail is having like a resurgence. So I don't know. Once I saw that kind of happening, it was like, not that we're junk mail, but that it does kind of make a pause. And there are, record players. Kids are all listening to record players now. So there's like a kind of a retro vibe that can kind of come with the paper. But that's not really we're just here to try to, just reflect.
We believe in committing acts of journalism, right? And that's something that there are journalists and people who self-identify as journalists, who went to school for journalism and who are editors. And then there are people who commit acts of journalism, who see a need in their community and they do it, and they don't in that moment think I'm committing an act of journalism or I'm now in the role of a journalist or an editor, but that's really what you guys are doing. And before I give you a chance to respond to that, I wonder, Eric, have you found that the more and more that you connect with NICE partners, that is the pattern, that these are people committing acts of journalism who don't necessarily think that they're journalism and don't always look at what they're doing as journalism?
Oh, absolutely. You know, when we get a chance to first, that initial contact with a lot of the NICE partners often is one of surprise on their part, right? Because many of our partners are creating this content out of this sense of a need, like what Carolyn was talking about this vacuum, right? The absence of storytelling, or the absence of a story that they know is there, but is not more broadly shared, right? And so I think at the heart or the root of journalism is storytelling. And so we all have that as a human need. And so I feel like the partners are, many of them, and this is the reason why I love the variety of folks that we work with in NICE and the content that they create, because it all comes from this human need to tell stories. And telling stories, depending on how you frame it and fact check it and source it and talk to multiple people, turns into committing an act of journalism, right? Whereas when I specifically asked several of the partners, do you consider yourself a journalist? Or I use the term journalist, they're like, what? No. I'm never going to school for this, or no, I don't, nobody pays me to do this. And so I think that it's almost like a cognitive dissonance or disconnect in people's minds that, no, this is what journalism is. It is the ability to tell a story. And you and I have talked about this, and I think this is something else we can get into, about this idea of objective storytelling. Like, must news be objective? And I don't think anybody really has a purely 100% objective viewpoint. So this process that many of the NICE partners go through is, again, it's just finding a story that's important. There's a human connection there, and we want to tell the story and share it. And so that's what I love about Northwest and the folks that you have contributing. And something that Steve said earlier, this way that you juxtapose two very different types of stories side by side. When you go through and read an edition of the Northwest Local, it takes you on a journey, like emotionally, through so many different types of stories. So absolutely. I'm wondering, what do you guys think about this idea of journalism? Do you consider yourself journalism, a background in journalism? And is there importance to this label?
I like the term acts of journalism, but we say we're journalisming.
Journalism.
Journalism. Oh no. But it's interesting that you should point this out, because it goes back to how we got started, right? We're more about documenting is what we tried to do. There's an interesting, what was it? The
Making of a Murder.
Remember that documentary?
Netflix.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that was like there's a great interview with those people that created that documentary. And they were like, we were just doing a documentary, but that became journalism. And that changed a whole lot of stuff, got that guy out of jail, all sorts of things. So documentation can become journalism, News can be journalism. Journalism doesn't have to necessarily be news. It can be documentation, storytelling. It can be something else. It can be what happens when you're just trying to let somebody know what's going on. So
where's that checkpoint though? Like when do you know that you have evolved and transcended into journalism? Is there like a factor, or
I don't think that's us though. I think that's whoever looks at us and sees what we're doing. It's up to you to decide if this is journalism or not. We're not here to say what we are or not. We're here to just be throwing out stuff that we see and we're having fun with, and people are talking and we're putting that out there. But we don't think of this as, we never think of this as like journalism. We're just, we're documenting, right?
Yeah, and I think the closest we get to it, and I think I can't quote it exactly, but it was something from The Guardian about how they said that we bring an opinion, but an informed opinion. So their thing was, look, this is our take on what this is, because not every story has completely equal sides to it. our take on it based on the research that we've done. And here's our research to back that up. So you'll see in a lot of our online articles, we've got links to various things. And our sort of, when we first started, our gold standard was, we hope that people are going to weigh in and have their take on it that differs from ours, so that we could get into a dialogue.
Yep.
So I guess that's what it is. We don't consider ourselves the final word on something. We're trying to start a conversation about something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you hear the term commit acts of journalism, though, what is that? When you hear it, what do you think about? How does that make you feel? What do you like? You know.
That sounds wonderful. It reminds me, we committed a big act of journalism, totally accidentally. In Germantown, one of the first things we did, we went to cover, someone told us GSSD, the Special Services District. It's a organization that was a nonprofit. They take tax money from all the businesses and commercial properties, put that to trash cleanup. And we just walked in the middle. People were just telling us, go to the meetings. And it turned out like trash was blowing everywhere. They were shaking people down for money. No one was seeing anything, change. So all we did, literally, we just sat there with a video with my phone on Facebook Live. And then and people would jump on, and occasionally there'd be a question. I'd ask for what someone said, and we just went to every single one, and that people just started getting madder and madder. And then eventually the neighborhood is, for the first time like ever, their second one followed, but the first time ever, they did not get reinstated. The council person was ready to reinstate. Enough business owners and commercial districts were like, we're not doing this. Yeah. So Ken Weinstein was really happy about that. But, I don't know, again, but now there's like a good thing, right? Because now there's trash pickup.
Now they've got trash pickup here.
Yeah, the council person came through with.
So we stumbled into it. It was definitely not by design.
Oh, no, but we got tons of credit for it. It's fun. Even now we get credit and blame. We get both.
Yeah.
But it was an accident, but just one of those beautiful acts of journalism that just happened.
Yeah. Are there questions or things that you guys want to know about? I mean, even if you don't consider yourself a journalist, are there things about the journalism industry that you want to achieve to or want to know about or want to demystify?
Well, I would like to know why journalists are so queasy about people that are like us that tell, they're really squeamish and very, very, So I think that's always a question to me. Like, you're not.
I think Eric has the answer.
Yeah, out there.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you. I wanted to hear your answer. I have a thought.
Oh, well, honestly, I mean, Eric and I have had a conversation about this. I think part of it is because journalists have convinced that they are a special breed of people. And in some ways they are, right? They are a protected class because, but at the same time, journalism is some of the most basic forms of civic engagement that anyone can participate in. It's why we say commit acts of journalism so much, because we want it to come across as though anybody can do it. Now, you have to be skilled. You have to be responsible. We are living in a world where everybody's a publisher, and as a result, there's so much misinformation. Everybody thinks they're an expert, right? People who can't find Afghanistan on the map have an opinion about foreign policy. So you have to, as you said, Steve, with The Guardian, have an informed opinion. Mm-hmm. But I think that when you go into a community or you're a part of a community and you take your phone and you go live and you say, this is something that others need to know about and no one else is doing it, so I'm going to put a camera to it and build interest. It's a very simple process, but journalism or journalists, like other professions, want to, and society has enabled this elitist culture around it. And they want to protect that elitist culture. And so they don't want citizens journalism. I come from a citizens journalism background, right? It's particularly why N.I.C.E is so important to me, because I wish that there was an infrastructure like this when I was doing Textbook Online, when I was on the ground with a Kodak ZI-8 camera, standing next to 6 ABC and with those huge cameras. And I had this little tiny camera, right, that I plug up into my computer, and get the USB. And I remember sitting next to, it was one of my very first protests in 2011. And I'll never forget this. It was a CBS 3 camera person who looked at me and he says, no one's ever going to take you seriously with that camera. He says, people want to talk to big cameras. They want to have a mic. and they're just going to look at you and they're not going to want to talk to you. I said, well, I don't believe that, and I'm going to prove you wrong. And I showed up with that camera and a $29 tripod from Target. And I just showed up at every single press conference. Didn't know how to edit video. And I just kind of learned along the way. And I don't remember when I came from, evolved from just a drummer who was committing acts of journalism to somebody who is an actual journalist and then an editor, because it just was so organic.
I think a lot of it also has to do with, just how a lot of journalists come through institutions and go through a process, right? And that institution indoctrinates them into journalism, right? And so it feels like a rite of passage, but it's also an industry, a role you've got to protect. Something else we run into as part of N.I.C.E is this idea that journalists feel like they have to hoard, protect their sources for news and information, right? And so it's like, I've got to tell a story. This person has a lot of stories. These stories help me get paid, and therefore I can't share them with you because I might not get paid, right? And so it's a deficit mindset, I think, in a lot of people that creates that. It's fascinating because, again, this is another reason why I love N.I.C.E because, one of the first reactions when we talk to partners about why we don't call the people that we want to talk to in the community a source is because of that reaction. Like people who are familiar with journalism know that it's very extractive, whereas community storytellers understand the power of being able to share individuals who have good stories to tell. So, any other questions that you guys have or thoughts that you have about?
Well, I kind of like that. I like the middle ground now that's sort of opening up. I remember I saw not too long ago, I guess, Helen Ubinas, I'm not sure if that's, I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Ubinas for the Inquirer, where she did like a pop-up newsroom.
Yes.
And she had a story about that. And I thought that was a great way to straddle the two, where she had this idea, she went out, she brought the resources to the community, and then she found some stories there from that actual event. And I thought that was so powerful in the sense that it sort of stepped on either side of that line. And I know you guys also, in a separate sort of idea here, you guys also went to Montclair State and you were talking with them about the nature of sort of voice-driven or not objective journalism. I'm not sure the exact term, but that was one of the first places we went to when we first decided to try and start up. We reached out to them and we said, can you give us any resources or any way to sort of give us some guidance on how to build a newspaper that's sort of driven by more voice and more opinion? And they said, well, we're over here in Jersey. We'd recommend maybe looking in PA for a little bit longer, but I've always wanted to get back to them because I think that they're on to something that's really kind of cool. They're making a study out of this sort of blending of, they're open to those ideas. And I love that, I'd love to get back to that at some point.
I want to give a shameless plug to N.I.C.E because we just got listed as a community journalism collaborative in their resource guide under Montclair State University, literally just this past week. So, but again, that comes from, this outreach and this brand new thing that we're creating that really doesn't seem to exist anywhere else. So, yeah, this is the reason why I love this concept that Chris and we've been introducing and talking to N.I.C.E partners about the future of journalism is people, right? Because what you're talking about is the life that people live. And oftentimes, again, journalism traditionally has been, or at least over the past several decades, has become extractive. And I think the thing that differs about what we're doing compared to traditional journalism industry is that we're getting off of that hamster wheel of trying to make deadlines and trying to catch eyes and get likes. Right. And so when you're constantly in competition and you're driven by the scoop, right, you often only tell half the story if you get that much. Where with the N.I.C.E partners, one of the things that I love, and again, I want to talk to you a little bit more about how you settled on your publishing schedule, because when you slow down a little bit, you get a chance to tell better stories, deeper stories and you get into the roots of things that a lot of times the journalism industry today just skims across the surface.
Yeah.
What is that touch for you? What is?
Well, I mean, it's funny because Carolyn equates that to not too long ago, like the Bulletin, for instance, would have its morning edition where you get your hot take on it. Not hot take, but you get the
scoops, you get the news.
And then you get the evening edition where you get some thought
Content.
pieces about it and it gives you context.
People used to do that. And at the turn of the century, there were over 100 newspapers in Philadelphia. Everyone had thought. Everyone had an idea.
That's probably so hard for people who are, were born before or after the towers came down, right? You're 20, 21, 22-year-olds to think about that. To think like that was that many newspapers in the city, like who was, but I tell people, even when I was growing up, there used to be a time where if you were doing a fringe art show, you got coverage in the Inquirer in the art section because the art section was so robust in the Inquirer, and there was different beats, and everything's been so consolidated, that everybody's buying the Wire content, right? And they're just republishing AP Wire. The original reporting. People have to make a big deal when they do original reporting because it's so rare.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
and then that also, I wanted to touch on what we get according to like the every month that we publish. We have a lot of time that when we're doing, lately we've been behind a little bit, but we used to make sure that we always posted things first and then shared them on social media. So people would comment and have these conversations, and then we take those conversations and we put them at the end of the article. So kind of like when you read something online, you look for the comments because you want to comment. Well, we can actually do that in paper form if we have enough time to do it. And I think it adds like another.
Oh, that's so cool.
I enjoy doing that. So I think we have a little bit of that.
We did that with a Matter Now just recently.
Yeah, but we used it with everything when we had time. So we'll hope to get back to that more.
And the other thing you think about too is the financial considerations for why newspapers do this, why they adopt this objective thing, which I'm sure you're both aware is for the advertising. Wanted to make sure you didn't piss anybody off, so everybody got a fair shake in the and that way you wouldn't alienate advertisers. So that was the big part of it. And then the other part, what was the other part? I kind of lost my train of thought on that. But anyway, that's the idea was that it was driven in that sense. Whereas before that, it was really just people, as we were been talking here, storytelling. People just wanted to get their spin out there. I know the other thing is with the wire services and all that, there's some publications out there that they're still in the old mindset of I need to get bigger. I need to cover more areas. I need to expand my lens because that way, again, I'm pulling in more advertisers. I'm pulling in more money. But that's sort of disappearing. That's a dinosaur at this point. And I think that a lot of these newspapers, a lot of grassroots newspapers, it helps to have a local focus or a regional focus because then you can generate that trust. And you can be there for people on a regular basis, whereas you're not just parachuting people into various sections of the city. So I think that's a critical part of it as well.
It's kind of what we learned, Eric, from Conrad, right? There's the idea of finding a niche and being unapologetically about just being a part of that, rather than always just trying to get big. Sometimes it really is quality over quantity. It's about, can you really deliver and become a subject matter and a thought leader on this particular area and own that instead of trying to be everything to everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Trying to be everything to everybody just waters down your effectiveness and what you can do. And one of the things that I've seen with folks trying to do that is they get stretched thin because you can't cover everything. You can't specialize in everything and you can't be everywhere at once. So one of the things that came up that I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit more about is something that Chris touched on earlier was your amazing ability to tap into your other N.I.C.E partners as content and a resource. Tell us a little bit about your philosophy around sharing content and what it means to you and what these relationships have been able to do for Northwest Local.
It's something I think also that's been touched on by other partners. For instance, Latif at Uptown Radio. You have a platform and you realize that, okay, well, why don't you come on to my platform? We can discuss, we can talk about various things. And with the newspaper, obviously, a lot of the other content providers are either digital or they're on podcasts, or they don't have a print
Or even
presence,
writing. Might not even
a
have
writing.
text.
Yeah. So, I mean, for us, it's been great because just being part of the program is there's all of this content out there. There's all these different voices. There's all these different perspectives. And we've always tried to find some way. We don't want to be the ones speaking so much in the newspaper. We want to be the ones reflecting back what other people are saying. So they have their own unique things. Yerub and Nora from the Friends Peace Sanctuary Journal. I mean, we just did something on the thing that Yerub had built, the Modif up in Roxborough. And you tap into a whole world view there of a guy who's he's an amazing ball of positive energy coming from a very difficult situation as a refugee, and then connections with veterans and so forth. And it just was, I mean, for us, it's like, hey, we're here to elevate or amplify your voice. So many of those things, P.O.C, Purple. I mean, everybody in the program has their own particular view. Conrad, you mentioned.
And we've all been about this. Like when we first started, every news source, anybody that had a newspaper, we were calling and writing, emailing them, be like, hi, what do you got? What do you want to share? Because I mean, I can share it in a local way. And like we just started with WHYY. Steve came up with a really good calculated frisk.
Calculated frisk.
Made a cool headline.
Yeah, Aaron Mosell's article about the difference in the police approach to frisking in the Northwest Philadelphia area.
So they might have missed it on WHYY, but maybe they'll get it with us with a snappy headline and a cool picture. So
I mean, Eric will tell you when he sent me the preview of the September edition, I replied to him. I said, "This is the spirit of N.I.C.E. I mean, this is exactly what we were trying to get to." And so again, I really do think you guys are setting a standard that I want others to follow, because that's what it's about. It's about, how do you exchange, right? It's news, information, community exchange. How do you exchange news and information with your community? Very simple.
That's it.
And really, that's it. And so I mean, kind of like what Eric was asking is, what has it been like for you guys? I mean, what was it like when you were asked to be a part of N.I.C.E? What went through your mind? And what's it been like? How has it changed you guys professionally and even personally?
Well, first off, we have to thank Jimmy from the Uptown Standard. He was the one, he put in a word for us. We so appreciate it. But yeah, to be in it, we knew from the jump that
we were learning about it and just thinking, that sounds amazing. I'm so glad something like that's coming. So it was just exciting at first. And when we saw the email, like, oh my God, this is what we wanted to do. Because we just started, because COVID taught us we had to switch to Zoom a lot, right? And so it would record. And then Steve's like, hey, Otter AI, plug it through, it gives you a transcription. We just clean it up a little. And we're like, Steve, I think we have an article. So it just became the way we would make articles with, not all of them, but a lot of content can just be made that way. And that's how we were able to take like the Uptown Radio article, P.O.C.'s Matter Now.
Your Instagram interviews.
Your Instagram interviews, Conrad's, and that about the Carousel House. Like YouTube, like there's so much content that's video or audio that can easily be grabbed and turned into an article. So we think that's like awesome. And so that's the fun. We can get everybody in N.I.C.E in the paper.
And that's the funny part is even explaining to, like, for instance, Conrad, I think I might have mentioned this to Eric before, in that we were trying to explain the idea to him is we want to just use your content. We don't want you to create anything new. And we didn't even get that out of our mouth. And Conrad's like, okay, I'll come up with 3 ideas I can pitch people. And we're like, no, not pitch. You don't need it. You're already doing it. So it's like, let's just share what you're already doing. So and Conrad needs another project. Like we need a hole in the head. So it's just, but it's interesting because we're going to be sending out some of those PDFs that we had sent to Eric from our most recent edition and encouraging the other providers, hey, anyone wants to get in here, please get in here, because for us, it's a platform. And we're offering you a platform.
And it's changed us in a good way. So we even changed us format-wise. We used to be in a broadsheet. We turned ourselves into a little tabloid because P.O.C asked us, we did something with her and she's like, what do you need? I will give you a favor back. Like, I will grant you a wish. And I was like, do you have any illustrators? or anybody who can do pictures for us? And she was like, bing, and she came back with 2. And they are amazing people, and we were so proud and happy to have them in the paper. So once we saw, isn't that a great cover? That's the first one.
Rhea.
I don't know if you can.
Oh, wow.
That's her cover image here. And then in the center spread,
Here we are.
that's Exhibit A. And that's her work there.
So I was pretty
And-
impressed. And then all of a sudden, I like how you don't notice right away, and then all of a sudden there's a gun pointed at you. It's kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
So what was I saying? So she gave us the match. So then we switched to a broadsheet. And
To a tabloid.
tabloid. Sorry, we switched to tabloid, and we're experimenting. That's something we never would have been able to do, is to try a middle spread. We're pushing our poor designer, who's just like, I don't know, but he's coming along for the ride. He's a lot of fun.
Yep.
So it's been really exciting that I would love to. East Falls, where we are, there's enough news for us to cover that fine. Germantown, we're hoping we're pulling some more people in. N.I.C.E helps with that, in that we're putting out more substantial content, and even some of it, like the group that actually was going on in Northwest Philly, so that kind of helps us. So hopefully it would be great if we could not be so attached to our area, but be more of, B-roll film, B-roll news, grassroots news, commentary, neighborhood. And since Northwest, where we're located, is so ridiculously diverse, like you've got governor here, the Kelly family, it's a good, there's so much, it's a good test ground, it's a good proof to see what things stick and what people are interested in. So we've been doing that for a long time already. So I really think this area is into the grassroots news idea.
Where do you want to go? And in your relationship with N.I.C.E, and where do you want to take Northwest Local?
Well, I mean, our relationship with N.I.C.E, I mean, we're quite happy to be pulling in whoever we can pull in. I mean, ideally, we would like to expand the size of the newspaper to accommodate for more of that.
Yes, it would be great to
More
get
of that content, because there are so many good stories. To have to curate just a few of them is.
Yeah, actually, the last 2 months we've
Yeah.
had to tell people we got to put them off another month.
Yes.
And people are very nice about it, but not that the other people that have news for
Right,
us and stuff.
understanding,
So so we could definitely. I would like to have it be able to, like, what's holding us back right now is just like design costs. You can add 4 more pages to a paper, and it costs like what, 2 cents for printer. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But the designer charges per page. Not cheap.
That's
So for and you can't just add 1 page. You have to add. So that like adds up very quickly. So that's pretty much what's hampering us right now, but not terribly. But I think if we could go anywhere, we want more N.I.C.E, more people. I would love it if like there was a separate, like there should be a N.I.C.E Facebook page where we can load all our stories. There should be where we can, like, I can put a story, I can tag N.I.C.E. It would be great to have every month people talk about what was their best story, and Steve and I would be like, hey, give us that. What's got the most engagement? What was your top story? Tell us what it was. Give us your recording of it, your video of it. Talk to us and tell us what happened. It could be an interview in the street. You just tell us. Speak it into a phone. Whatever. We can turn that into. We have enough resources on our side that we can turn pretty much any content into a story that we think could be very grabby and fun. But so we just want more stories.
Yeah. Do you think that having more content from WHYY and having more content from N.I.C.E helps you pitch it to advertisers and advertise more interest, or do you guys not really think about advertisers?
We're thinking more along the lines of nonprofit.
Yeah.
We think actually news for us is really kind of a resource, much like food or government programs or anything of that sort. And I think it shouldn't be funded by advertisers, because advertisers in general tend towards the conservative. They don't want to upset any customers. So I think it should be. I actually think in an ideal world, you'd have government financing for news.
It's a
Yeah, well, I mean, and then look, in New Jersey, they passed the legislation, $1 million for local grassroots content creators. The New Jersey, I'm going to butcher the name, but it's like the New Jersey Info Fund, and the governor allocated $1 million. And it was actually through the advocacy of Free Press, who does a lot of, it was one of our collaborators and who does a lot of news advocacy work. And I truly do think that I agree that news is what helps advance civic life. And any real government that's about having real healthy people should want to advance civic life in that way. I mean, Eric and I have talked about how we think that there is an organic, innate connection between voter turnout and the lack of information or the abundance of information, right? It's why, you know, there's the Northwest is considered a super voters out there. They may be getting more access to information, right? And so I think if they did a deeper dive and looked at the neighborhoods that turn out the less and overlap that with like news deserts and information deserts, you'll find a really stark connection.
I think you're absolutely right. And that brings up the interesting, real fast, we are going for a nonprofit right now. We're working on that for us, because we added a separate wing, a resource center, which is started with census and voting in 2020. That's when it was pandemic. We weren't using this office. We didn't know what to do with it. So someone came up and can I use it and give out food? And they use our computer here to sign people up for stuff and programs they don't know about. And just doing that, she always makes sure that people work here, they always give people a paper. So we've been building a huge amount of trust. When they give out the food boxes, they put a paper in there. So to us, if you just depend on advertisers, you're only going to talk to the advertisers. You're going to you want the area to look nice. You're going to want to have the appeal to investors, have happy couples in the street. Oh, look, it's the cupcakery. But that's not really the news that needs to get told. That leaves a lot of people out. That makes a lot of people feel like they're not a part of it and not, they don't see themselves in this. And I'm never going to get these struggling businesses here to be able to fund the paper. They have enough to worry about in these codes that are under resourced. It's horrible to think that we would demand, I don't want to ask them for ad money. I want to give them coverage. I want to help them get bigger. I don't see our point here is to fleecing the community here, especially that's not the way this should work. It's a resource. So that's why we're doing it.
The more you guys talk, the more special I realize you guys are. I mean, literally, it's again, when I think about the traditional journalism narrative, it's almost 2022, and you guys are advancing a print product and not interested in appealing to advertisers. I mean, that's so counterculture. Like when you say that narrative out loud, people are like, "What?"
But it's working.
It's working so far, and we do still even have advertisers. People just try. They chase us down, and they say the nicest things, like, you know what? I just want to support this. So here, which is just
you get it for a different reason.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to touch on your point earlier, politicians should want it because that very misinformation is what leads to mobs, attacks. So it's really in your personal interest to find an organization that educates people. You know,
there you go. Good one, right?
Right.
Steve, Carolyn, tell our audience how they can support you, how they can find the paper online, and some of the social media handles they should follow.
All right.
Well, start with our website. It's www.nwlocalpaper.com. We also have a Facebook page, The Local. We have Instagram.
And that's at East Falls Local, because that's when
at
we
East
began.
Falls Local, because that's where we started. We're now Northwest Local.
We're also the local paper Philly, right? That's also we have a bunch of URLs that go to anything local will come to us. Yeah. We're on Instagram. I don't really post a lot on Instagram. I do stories, but they're always us drinking or chasing the cat. I don't know.
That could be. Look, it's Instagram.
That's really behind the scenes.
But
Facebook. I'm always on Facebook because that's where I work.
But supporting us really is like sharing.
Sharing paper. Tell us a story. Email us.
Yes.
What's your email?
editor@northwestlocalpaper.com, nwlocalpaper.com.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
and even complaints, because
I love them.
feedback for us is a gold standard. We like to where we're on point and where we're not.
Yeah.
Well, again, I appreciate it. And while we're filling out URLs, WHYY.org/NICE, learn more about the news and information community exchange. You can reach Eric Marsh at emarsh, MARSH, at WHYY.org. If you're watching this and you know of a great grassroots content creator, somebody committing acts of journalism in your neighborhood, send us a line, shoot us hello. We're always interested in meeting new people. Steve and Carolyn, thank you so much for your time and for teaching us and teaching us about your paper and your product and your journalisming, as you will. Eric, thank you for everything that you do for NICE and how you connect with the partners. It's certainly an added benefit. And thank you guys all for watching. I'm Christopher Flooded Drummernars, WHYY's managing editor for community engagement. Thanks for watching. See you next time.